It's the big showdown in Stillwater this weekend, and I love the Utes. I love them, except I don't.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Getting you ready for Week 4. It starts today. It's right around the corner, and it's brought to you by FanDuel, of course. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. That is JT Wistersill, Locked On Utes. We're talking Big Ten picks. We're talking SEC picks. That's what I'll do later, but we're talking one game, one of the games of the week. Oklahoma State hosting Utah. JT, I'm enamored with Utah in this football game. I love them to go into Stillwater and win, except I hate it because can someone tell me what's happening with Cam Rising? Nobody seems to know.
It's just so frustrating to be in this position once again. I had Porter Larson of ESPN 700 on my show last week. He is the one who tweeted out that Cam Rising's x-ray came back negative. Porter told me that last week Cam would have played if it was a must-win game. So that's why I still think I trust the sources that our Porter has. I trust the source. Josh Furlong is another one. He's one of the most reliable beat writers out here. Josh Furlong was the one who asked Dorian Singer, and then Dorian Singer is the one who said that Cam is going to play this week. So I'm trusting it from a player's mouth. And then Brett McMurphy even said the same thing, that Cam was going to play. And now the betting line is moving. So this is where it's just so frustrating. I wish we mandated an injury report, especially with, our friends at FanDuel would probably like to have, like this affects the lines and the odds and everything going on. So it's incredibly frustrating. I think based on what's been said that Cam Rising is going to play, but we'll see what happens.
If he plays, I love Utah. If he doesn't, I don't. It's that simple. Now, FanDuel doesn't move lines on accident. They don't move it because they're in the mood. They don't move it because, let's just do something fun and see where No, they move because they think they know something. Utah was favored by less than a field goal, granted, but even that much of a shift to make Oklahoma State now the favorite, it raises alarm bells everywhere you look, JT, and understandably so, because generally quarterback availability is what causes that sort of shift, and it's why I want to like the Utes in this game. I liked them before the year. I still like them, but when you take Cam Rising out of that offense, it's not the same. So let's just presume for a moment that FanDuel's got some well-placed sources, even better than you, and you've got a many. If Isaac Wilson's starting at quarterback, can Utah win this football game?
They can. I don't think they will. I think Oklahoma State will win. I think this is where it's so frustrating if Cam doesn't play. This is a good matchup for Utah for me, because this game will really fall on the shoulders of Alan Bowman. And I know he made plays against Arkansas's defense. This Utah defense is much better than Arkansas's defense. This is by far, he hasn't been sacked yet this season. Oklahoma State offensive line, really weird, by the way. Haven't given up a sack, but they can't generate holes for Ollie Gordon. I've never seen anything like it. Speaking of not being able to generate holes for Ollie Gordon, he's not going to get going. This is a top 5 run defense from last season with pretty much everyone back for Utah. So I don't think this is the game.
Well, Jonah Ellis isn't there.
No, he's not. But Connor O'Toole and Van Fillinger were 1 and 2.
That's true. That's true. I'm just saying, pretty much everyone's back. Jonah Ellis had a sack on Sunday. He's a pretty good player.
He's the only guy, and their pass rush has still been good. But you're right, still an NFL caliber player. And I will say there is a chance Karene Reed, the Utah good inside linebacker, will miss this game. Didn't play at Utah State, but still got Lander Barton, still got that elite group of defensive tackles and a bevy of pass rushers that you can send at Alan Bowman. But this, once again, it's a good matchup for Utah because the game's going to fall on Alan Bowman's shoulders. Already thrown 2 interceptions on the season. And you look at this Utah offense, right? Their secondary is not good, Oklahoma State's. So there would be plenty of plays and opportunities for Cam Rising to find Dorian Singer and Brant Keithy down the field. Spencer, you called the game, and we've even had fun interactions about, how Cam Rising's looked so far. If Cam were to play in this game, I think he would miss a couple throws. But the Oklahoma State secondary is going to give Cam so many chances that I think he's also going to hit a lot of them. So that's where, if it's Isaac, this is such a step up from the Battle of the Brothers when he started last week against Utah State. I think Utah will still hang around. I still believe with Isaac Wilson at quarterback, this overall overall Utah roster is still one of the 5 best teams in the Big 12, but they are not one of the top 3 without Cam Rising. So if FanDuel knows something I don't, then Utah could be in a lot of trouble without Cam Rising.
I think for Utah, if they have the sort of offensive success that Arkansas had a couple of weeks ago, I don't expect them to put up 600 yards. It's not that type of offense. Kyle Whittingham's not rolling that out. I like Andy Ludwig. That's just not what Utah's MO is going to be. But if they can move the ball at that sort of rate on this Oklahoma State defense, it's going to be really tough to score that many points. Because you think about Utah, you think about a defensively led team. You think about running the football. You think about physicality and Kyle Whittingham and low-scoring slugfests for the most part. I've seen this Utah team get involved in shootouts. I've seen them put up 30 to 40 points. I think they're capable of doing that here if Cam's in the game. And if Cam isn't there, the offense ground to a halt. I know they had success against Utah State. That's a middle-of-the-road Mountain West team at best. And this is Oklahoma State on the road in Stillwater. I struggle seeing them having a complete passing game. And I think the defensive philosophy, this one could get ugly if there's no Cam Rising, in that both teams, I think, load the box and say, you, quarterback, go throw for 300 yards. Alan Bowman, you've been torching everybody. You know what? You prove that you can throw on this Utah defense. Oklahoma State offensive line, you prove that you can beat this Utah team. But I am not coming off my prediction that no Cam Rising, no victory.
I understand that. I will make a little bit of a case of why Utah could still hang around and potentially win this game if Cam didn't play. I would be really nervous if Oklahoma State had a top 100 defense in terms of yards allowed per game. They don't. They're 124th in yards allowed per game. They're 128th in pass yards allowed per game, 122nd in first downs allowed per game. They have had 5 3-and-outs. They have forced offenses to go 3-and-out 5 times on the season, playing South Dakota State, Arkansas, and Tulsa. And that's it. So this defense, it's not that good. Nick Martin is a monster. There are some individual moments where you see this defensive line do something, but overall, it's not that compelling and impressive of a unit. Arkansas was blowing them out early and then let them get back in the game with some of those turnovers we had. Alan Bowman, at one point in the first quarter of that game, had a stretch where he didn't start the game 1 for 8, but he was 1 for his last 8 passes at one key stretch where it looked like Oklahoma State was going to get upset by the Razorbacks. So I still think this Oklahoma State team, I want to see them against a really good team, because we know Arkansas is not that good of a team. This is legitimately one of the best defenses, I think, not just in the Big 12, but by the time the season ends, I think it will be a top 10 unit. Utah will give up some yards through the air, but if Alan Bowman tries too many 50-50 balls, these Utah defensive backs have the talent to pick him off. So I still think no matter what, Utah hangs around, but look, it is still a true freshman starting on the road if it's not Cam Rising. So you're right. I could definitely see a world where it's a blowout. And also say this, if Cam were to play, I think there's things, once again, it's not a good matchup for the Cowboys, in my opinion, where Utah could potentially blow them out. I'm not predicting that, but I can see a wide variety of outcomes come Saturday in Stillwater.
I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a great environment. It's going to be a good football game. Josh Pate has said he thinks the winner has an 80% chance to go to the Big 12 championship game. I couldn't disagree more. Could not disagree more, because I don't know if Cam Rising's healthy through all those games, and I don't trust Oklahoma State. And that's why I like Utah. So I'll presume that Cam Rising plays. If he doesn't, I will take the Cowboys to win and cover. But if Cam Rising plays, give me the Utes 34-24. Your game prediction, sir.
We got 34 as well. I actually went 34-26. Like I said, Oklahoma State moves the ball through the air.
Well, this segment's over. Great minds apparently think alike. Oh, my goodness. The last time we had score predictions that close, Florida State lost in week 1. So have fun. Have fun this week, JT. JT Wistersill, Locked on Utes. JT, appreciate it as always.
Spencer.
I'm picking every game in the Big Ten next. Every single one, no matter who it is. I already picked USC Michigan. Something to remind you about that game. That's coming up next. First, let's talk about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and even more than that. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors, they have you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So one thought on USC Michigan before the big game at the Big House this weekend. USC is favored by 5.5 points. Line kind of fluctuating there. I like USC to win and cover that number. If you're a Michigan fan, confident going into this game, and this is a pretty important game for Michigan, first Big Ten conference game, you want to avoid having a second loss or else you'd have to win out to make the college football playoff, and you still have Ohio State and Oregon on the schedule. So now Oregon hasn't looked phenomenal, but for one game so far this year, still, if Michigan doesn't win this game, playoff hopes looking pretty darn dire. If you're a Michigan fan thinking, hey, we're going to go out and, get 27 points, win this game, slugfest it out, certainly if USC gets to 30 points, Michigan is not going to get there when they're making a quarterback change. But the fundamental question for Michigan is this: how are you going to score points in this game? Spencer, we're going to run the football. It's Michigan. Okay, I understand you're going to run the football. Is that going to produce touchdowns every time? Are you going to be able to run the football? Because I watched USC's defense so far this year. It's dramatically improved. I watched them against LSU that coming into the year was supposed to have one of the best offensive lines in the SEC, and they did struggle against South Carolina, so maybe they're not quite that good, but at the very least, they've got 2 NFL first, second round tackles on that offensive line. And USC, they didn't let them run the football a whole heck of a lot. Garrett Nussmeier had to move the ball. And by the way, final score of that game was 27-20. So that's a question I have about Michigan. How are you scoring points in this game? More than, 10-13. I don't suspect that they will. I think 17 points, maybe they can get to 20. I don't see them pushing in the upper 20s. I don't see them getting into the early 30s, not when they're making a quarterback change. That's why I think USC wins that game and covers the 5 points. Elsewhere around the Big Ten, Illinois, Nebraska. Love Nebraska tonight. Absolutely love Nebraska in this spot. I think Illinois is better than I thought. I think Nebraska is exactly what I thought. Maybe even better. I think Nebraska keeps it going. When they pick up a top 25 win here, which is what this matchup is, Nebraska should absolutely be moved to inside the top 20. They've been really impressive. If they win this game by 10, 14 points, they should be inside the top 20. They've been really impressive. Ohio State, they play Marshall. I'm not particularly worried there. Indiana is going to start 4-0. Do you understand that? Indiana plays Charlotte this week at home. Kurt Cignetti has got the boys rolling. Curtis Rourke is playing some really good football. He hasn't thrown an interception yet. I tell you what, Indiana could be one of the surprise teams of the Big Ten. At the very least, they look like they've made the right hire. Maryland at home, Villanova. I don't think Mike Loxley's team will have problems there. They're favored by around 17.5. I don't know if I cover that number because I haven't been impressed with them yet. I'll predict them to do that. I'll go Maryland 38, Villanova 13. I'll give you a confidence booster there for the Terrapins. But Kent State against Penn State. Penn State favored 7 touchdowns. Oof, that's a big number. Almost half a century in University Park. And, the last time Penn State played an inferior opponent, it didn't go very well. Bowling Green had them down 17-7. I sure hope against a Kent State team that's yet to win a football game this year, Penn State is able to dominate. I sure hope, and I suspect they'll get back to their ways. Speaking of dominating, LSU plays UCLA. If you would like an opportunity to make a financially lucrative investment, go bet LSU against UCLA. This is a UCLA team that I think is starting to accept. Someone who covers the team, not me, but someone who covers the team tweeted out that twice this week, the coaches had to stop UCLA's practice because there wasn't enough energy. This following a 42-13 beatdown by Indiana. They're going to Death Valley. I bid the Bruins good luck. Go in and, I don't know, get out healthy, I suppose. Give me LSU 45-13 in that football game. Might not even be 13. It might be more like 6. Virginia Tech hosting Rutgers. Virginia Tech's got to win that football game. They really do. If they want to have the sort of season that they're capable of on paper coming into the year, Virginia Tech has to win that football game. Favored by just over a field goal, I think they get it done. It's the best team that Rutgers has faced so far. It's on the road. Blacksburg should be hopping. Give me the Hokies 27-20. Northwestern Washington, speaking of teams in need of a bounce back, the Huskies, they need to get 3-1 here, or bowl eligibility is going to be in question, because this is the easy part of their schedule. They've got Rutgers on the road next week in Piscataway in their first true welcome to the Big Ten moment, where they go all the way across the continental United States, about as far as you can go from Seattle to Piscataway. It's one of the longest trips, I imagine. They host Northwestern this week. I think David Braun's team is scrappy. I don't know that it's great. I kind of feel the same way about Washington. I don't think it's great. I don't think they're terrible necessarily. Washington favored by 11.5. Give me the Huskies to win. I'll take Northwestern to cover there, though. 28-20. I think Washington wins at home. Iowa at Minnesota. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Show me what you're made of game. That's what this is. It's show me what you're made of. Iowa. Was that Iowa State loss a fluke or an indicative sign of bad things to come? Minnesota. Should you have beaten North Carolina, and should you be 3-0? Or should you actually be 1-2 if you had a tougher non-conference slate? This game is being played in Minneapolis. Hawkeyes are favored. I've got more faith in Iowa here. I think they go on the road, win this football game in a classic Iowa slugfest, 20-14. I think Iowa is able to win. Offense has been inconsistent for the Hawkeyes, but good enough, I think, to win that football game. One of the under-the-radar, interesting non-conference games in a couple of head coaches that are trying to build. But have they arrived sooner than we think? Think about this. I talked about Indiana and the potential to go to 4-0. Michigan State, who was already notched a win over Maryland on the road, 27-24. Is Jonathan Smith's team just better than we thought? We're going to find out. Boston College favored by 6.5 points in a Big Ten ACC showdown here. I think Bill O'Brien is a really good coach. I think Jonathan Smith is a really good coach. I think both guys have a little bit of building to do. I think Boston College has got less. Eagles win this one 27-17 over the Spartans at home in Chestnut Hill. And then finally, speaking of Jonathan Smith, his little team, Oregon State, is taking on the Big Ten this week. And the Beavs at home at Reser Stadium, where they're not an easy team to beat. I know Oregon thumped them last week. Newsflash, Purdue is not Oregon. Ryan Walters, year 2. I'm a little disappointed in Purdue. Thought they put up more of a fight against Notre Dame last week. They got blasted into oblivion. Beavs are favored in this game. And I think Oregon State is going to get the bounce back that they need to jumpstart their season. Whatever that season ends up being, I think Oregon State's going to win this football game in Corvallis. I just don't have any trust in what Purdue has put on the field through their first 2 games. Oregon State's got 3 under their belt. I think that matters a little bit more continuity, a little bit more assurance about how they want things to run and how to operate and how they want everything to look and feel on game days. This is at Reser Stadium, and Boilermaker fans are about to learn. That's a tough place to go. That is a tough place to go in and win a football game. So I'll take Oregon State to win that game. They like to run the ball, take the air out of it, kill the clock, play ball possession. They did that in the first half against Oregon last week. If they do that against Purdue, I think their defense could give up just 10 points, and that's how many I think they allow. 23-10, I think Oregon State gets the win. That's the week of games in the Big Ten. Guess what? There's one more conference where it just means more. I tell you what, the SEC never fails to just put a smile on my face for the games it generates. You know which game I'm picking first? The one that could literally get Billy Napier tarmacked. That's coming up next. First, let's talk about FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. You know why? They're America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, just $5, and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. If you want to bet on college football, there's no better place to go than FanDuel. They're just isn't. You know why? They're America's #1 sports book. They've got every game you need. They've got lines. They're moving all over the place, making me think twice and 1,700 times, frankly, about Oklahoma State and Utah. Whatever you're feeling, you can go bet it over at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sports book. Get your college football gambling fix on over at FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sports book. I don't know if there are two coaches in the country that need a win as badly as Billy Napier and Hugh Freeze. Under the radar important game this week. Arkansas, Auburn, I'll make my pick in a moment. But Billy Napier should have been fired already, in my view. I don't know what he's still doing there as the Florida head coach other than, I don't know, lowering the buyout by a few $1,000s a day. I don't really know. They go to Starkville this week. To Starkville, excuse me. I had an extra S in there, and I did not mean to. I know better than that. Florida at Mississippi State. If Florida, I tell you what, if you lose to Mississippi State, they got boat raced on that very field by Toledo last week. I don't even know what Brandon Olson's going to do. He's a Toledo grad. He's a Florida fan, and boy, by the transitive property, Toledo's better than Florida. That wouldn't be a great thing for the Gators. Billy Napier better win this football game. I've already picked Florida twice this year, and I'm 0-2. Let's make it 0-3, why don't we? I will take the Gators 27-23 over Mississippi State. I think the Bulldogs can cover that number. Kentucky very nearly had the biggest upset in college football last week, but they didn't. They host Ohio. I hope Mark Stoops doesn't lose that football game. Are they going to be able to pass the football? Brock Vandegrift is, let's just say, off to a slow start. They need to jumpstart things. I think Kentucky, though, with their physicality, can just overwhelm Ohio in this one. 38-17, I think they beat the Bobcats. UCLA, LSU, I already talked about that game. I mean, this is LSU all the way. I don't know if UCLA is going to score 10 points. I really don't. I think Blake Baker and company could start cooking and just blast the Bruins into oblivion. Indiana did it last week in Los Angeles. What do you think LSU is going to do as they try to make a statement and keep themselves in the college football playoff fold? Okay, let's get to an interesting game now, because Arkansas-Auburn is more than just a little interesting. It is utterly fascinating. So you have one of the hottest seats in all of college football in Sam Pittman on one sideline. On the other sideline, you have an uncomfortable seat. Not a hot one, an uncomfortable one in Hugh Freeze. This is at home. Auburn, less than a field goal favorite. Uh-oh. Ruh-roh, Raggy. That's not good. Because that kind of means, especially in college football, Vegas thinks there's a real chance that Arkansas goes in and wins this game. Can you imagine if Hugh Freeze, after losing to Cal, after losing to that nobody cares about the program, what is this Cal football team who plays Florida State this week? I think they go to 4-0, could host College Game Day next week when Miami comes to town. After losing to that team, they come back and get a big win a week ago against an opponent that nobody cares about, and now they start SEC play. Boy, Oklahoma's coming to town in the not-too-distant future. Auburn's schedule, allow me to remind you of Auburn's schedule. Arkansas this week, Oklahoma next week, at Georgia, at Missouri, at Kentucky. Oh, boy. You better win this football game if you are Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. I mean, you've got to do it. It's not that he goes on the hot seat if he loses. It's that it gets more uncomfortable. Like somebody put some fire ants under there, and he's like, ow, ow, hey, what's happening here? If you lose twice at home in the first 4 games of the season to Cal and Arkansas, hot seat, and the Bears out of the ACC, classic ACC power, oh boy. Hugh Freeze better win that football game. I'll take Auburn because they're at home. That feels like a coin flip game to me. I can't wait to watch. Cannot wait to watch Arkansas and Auburn and such. I'll take the Tigers to win 24-20. Vanderbilt goes to Missouri. Oh, Vanderbilt. Did you know that last week Vanderbilted as hard as they've ever Vanderbilted? They had the opportunity, along with Florida State, to be the only teams to have locked in the result on their preseason win total on FanDuel by week 3. Florida State goes 0-3, and they go under 9.5 wins. And then Vanderbilt was a 2.5 win total team as a 10.5 point road favorite at Georgia State, and they lose. Oh boy. Is Clark Lee going to have his seat cook up? Well, they're going to Missouri this week as a 20-point dog. I don't know what the vibes are like inside that Commodore locker room. I don't know that I love it. I like the Tigers in this one. 30-17. I'll take a Vanderbilt cover. Why not? Why not? Tennessee, Oklahoma. Love this game. Talked about it earlier this week. I've got the Vols winning. I think they cover as well. 34-23. I think Tennessee beats Oklahoma. That's one of the best games of the entire weekend. Bowling Green goes to Texas A&M. No issue here for the Aggies, who are ranked inside the top 25 for reasons that nobody can figure it out. I legitimately don't know what's happening here. Texas A&M shouldn't be ranked. Not yet. They should need to stack up a couple more impressive wins. They should blow Bowling Green into oblivion. But why don't you ask Penn State how easy it is to beat Bowling Green? I mean, Penn State should have been able to do it on paper. Guess what? They just didn't. I really don't know why. Akron goes to South Carolina. Look, Akron's not a good football team. They have been a rough program the last couple of years. South Carolina, they get to go back into the cozy confines of Williams-Brice Stadium. That's great. What's not great is after South Carolina wins this game, probably by a lot, they're going to be thinking about what could have been. And here's the question for South Carolina that'll be indicative of how the rest of their season will go. Are they going to come out in, woe is us, we're your, can't believe we didn't do it? Or is it, we should have won that football game. We got to play a level that allows us to build towards another upset. Remember, if you go back to the preseason when I made my game-by-game schedule predictions, I said in a couple weeks, they're going to upset Ole Miss. I'm just telling you right now, I haven't come off of that prediction yet. Not yet. I like Ole Miss. I like Ole Miss a lot. LSU went in there and should have lost the football game. Some questionable calls in that one that went against the Gamecocks, and they went in favor of the Tigers, and LSU squeaked it out. But what does South Carolina do? That's an interesting question here. That spread is up around 28. I don't think South Carolina is going to cover. I'll take 33-10. I don't think they are on upset alert here. I just don't think they're going to cover that number. I think they're going to come out a little sluggish, so they'll stop them from doing that. They'll have a touchdown drive that turns into a field goal because of a penalty, something like that. I don't think they quite cover 27.5. Ole Miss should cover, though. They're favored by 36.5 against Georgia Southern. And Ole Miss, let's just say, when they play bad football teams, as they have each of the first 3 weeks of the season, Furman, Middle Tennessee, and Wake Forest, who got beat so badly that Wake Forest decided, hey, we don't want to play Ole Miss anymore. Look, we'll buy you out of that game, and we're going to play Oregon State instead. Which, look, it has some longer-term implications, perhaps, that Wake Forest decided, yeah, let's go play Oregon State. It's a great get for the Beavs to have a Power 4 opponent next year and then one other year no later than 2029. But that's what Ole Miss does to teams that are, not quite as good. Now, Georgia Southern, that's Clay Helton's spot. Not Todd Helton, but Clay Helton. Once upon a time, I referred to that head coach as Todd Helton. I didn't even catch myself in the moment. You know what? Nobody's perfect. But I am a fool if I don't learn from my mistakes, so here I am. Clay Helton, head coach. Georgia Southern's pretty good. Maybe they hang with Ole Miss, but I love Ole Miss's roster. I love Ole Miss's team, and this is what Ole Miss does. Early in the season, they're not playing anybody. They're just cruising on through and blasting everybody into oblivion. Give me the Rebels and give me them big 49-10. UL Monroe goes to Texas. Is this the most interesting 44.5 point spread football game you've ever seen? Is it? It probably is. Because who's playing quarterback for the Texas Longhorns? Oh, that's right. It's Arch Manning. Is he the most discussed backup quarterback of all time? Probably. Well, we're going to get to see him start for a full game against nobody that's good. And boy, he looked good against UTSA. So give me the Longhorns. Give me the Longhorns big. Do they cover a 44.5? I don't know. You do whatever you want with that. If you're the sort of sicko betting Texas UL Monroe, good for you. You're a diehard college football fan. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.